What we really wanted to do today is to cover the golden mean in detail. What the golden mean is, how does it apply to painting? Now again, this is something that I covered in my Power to Create class. I think it's important, especially since now we're redoing some of the homework and we're going to be talking about certain elements. And I said that this year what we're going to be doing is going through all of these elements and doing a refresher course for some people, and they'll get some, aha, that's how that worked. And some of you didn't have the pleasure of actually learning this stuff to begin with. The golden mean is actually a measurement or a philosophy that we actually find in nature. It's a reoccurring measurement that comes up over and over and over again. If you take apart a nautilus shell, all those little spaces in the shell are mathematically equal in their own way. They get small, small, smaller. When you stand at the ocean and you listen to the ocean, the waves come in at a certain rhythm. There's a mathematical equation that actually can tell you what those rhythms are. When you look at a tree and you see the branches starting here and then the next branches starting there and they start getting smaller towards the top, that's the golden mean at play. Almost everything in nature follows this mathematical system that's out there. It was first discovered by the Romans and the Greeks. It is the reason why the Parthenon looks so beautiful compared to everything else that was built up at that period of time. It is the reason why Greek art looks so phenomenal with very little training of what they actually knew back then. Okay? It is a mathematical equation that had been figured out, lost, figured out again, and then lost, and now is coming back again. The Greeks knew it, and then after the fall of Greece, we went into the Dark Ages. During the Dark Ages, knowledge pretty much stayed to small areas, small valleys, small towns. And communication and sharing of knowledge was actually kept to a standstill. And it was during the Renaissance when all of a sudden society started to connect together with shipping and traveling, and science started to share again this philosophy. And we see this philosophy as a rebirth, and actually one of the reasons that caused the Renaissance and all the beautiful architecture was the golden mean, or the divine proportion. There's several names that they use for that. It flourished in art for another 400 years, and then modernism came. Modernism said, no more of that old stuff, we're going to do everything new. And they got rid of it. And believe it or not, over the last 100 years, nobody even spoke of it. I used to teach this early in my teaching 30 years ago, and I would put golden mean into the computer and I would get nothing. Now you put it in and there's pages and pages and pages and pages. There's Wikipedia has things. So if you want to research what it is. How does it apply to painting? Well, basically, you want to divide your space into proportional measurements, all divided by 1.618. That's the magic number, 1.618. Now, before we actually see that on a canvas, the canvases back then, the artists that used the canvases back then also had golden mean canvases. Their canvases, when you walk into a museum, are more proportionate to how we see things. If you can imagine, if we feel a certain way about the ocean, if we feel a certain way about things, then the canvases would play into that same idea. Golden mean is perfect proportions. It's height against width. Okay? So in a lot of ways I talk, imagine if we would take your old television set. Remember the square sets? Remember what it was like to walk into the new Best Buy and they had all those big, wonderful screens. Okay? And then you go back home and look at your little square TV. What was the first thing you thought? I need to get rid of that box. Okay? Why wouldn't that be with your canvas? And imagine now with this new beautiful television, would you trade that in and have another square box? No, we get used to that. That feels good. Golden mean is an internal feeling that you know something feels right. It's that feeling that women have when they decorate their living room and they'll walk in and they'll go, something's not right here. And then they'll go, okay, that's good now. They'll move something an inch, and that's the golden mean at play. You know something is wrong when it's out of place, and when it's in place, everything's perfect. So why wouldn't you want a canvas to be that way? So you can have like a 16 by 20, or you can invest in a canvas like this. Now what does this look like? It looks like our TVs that we have now, okay? Doesn't it make sense if television has gone this technology? Your cell phones are also the same proportion. Designers are getting that this feels good. This feels natural. Imagine going back to those old flip phones where everything was kind of an odd size. No, but you see people walking around with these phones, it's like part of them because it's like, it just feels good. This feels good, okay? Masterpiece canvases are the only canvases that are on the market right now that are producing these golden mean canvases. Most of the people who handle Masterpiece, you can actually buy them there. They're wonderful canvases. As far as canvases, store-bought canvases, they're on the top of the line. Masterpiece had come out and said, we're not going to bother trying to compete with China, you know, Michaels and all these things. We're going to beat them through quality. And quality they've actually produced. So a little bit about canvases real quick. Masterpiece decided to actually stretch the tauntest canvas on the market. It's the tightest one, okay? They've started putting in crossbars that sit way from the canvas so that when you paint across the top, you're not hitting the bar. And one thing that you need to pay attention here, not only do we have one bar, but we have two. And if you notice, this is not a large canvas. Okay? This is a golden mean canvas. It's 18 by 29. Okay? That's an odd size. Now, one reason why people don't want to paint on the golden mean canvases is because you have to get them custom framed, which is something that you have to think about. The thing that you have to get, though, is that if you're going to create a masterpiece, why wouldn't you put it on something that you'd want to have custom framed? Standard frames that come out of Mexico are, you know, they're good enough. But custom frames, or frames that are actually made for your painting, are exquisite. And a good frame will either make or break a painting. Okay, so that shouldn't be anything that is fearful. So having a real quality canvas to start off with. Now this is an oil primed canvas, and what you actually saw on the back, it's linen. These canvases run you 3 times more than what you normally would pay for a regular canvas. But anybody who's worked on these, how many of you actually worked on them? What is the sensation? Yeah.
This is my first one that I'm using, and honestly, I'm using less paint. And I can tell that my brushes aren't getting worn out, so that's...
Yeah, so you save money on brushes, so that's great, yeah.
I like the way that when you finish the picture, it's sort of has a luminosity about it.
There's a luminosity. You know, one thing that students will say when they come into class is that they'll go, why is it when I step into a museum, those paintings glow, and I step into a gallery and everything looks flat? One reason why the old masters' paintings look so phenomenal is that they're on really beautiful canvases. Okay, so that really makes a difference. So, so having a really fine canvas to start off with is well worth the money. And if you don't know, try it. Try it. You will not believe it. It might change the way you paint forever.
It sucks up the paint.
Yeah, the cheap canvases suck up the paint.
This one too.
No, these ones don't. The paint sits on
I
top.
find it-
No, it's
Paint goes right.
no. It is a sensation. That's wonderful. Okay, so enough about the canvases. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit about the golden mean. How do we actually get there? This is a golden mean canvas, and like I said, the proportions are such that the width to the length is pleasing to look at. Very similar to our television sets. It's very panoramic. Now, how do we actually achieve the golden mean measurements? What I've done is I've taken a canvas and I've actually cut this up and very quickly tell you how to work with the golden mean measurements. The golden mean measurements, again, are the length and the width divided by 1.618. When you're working with a calculator, what you would do is you would take 29 inches, and I actually have the measurements here so that you can figure it out. And what you would do is you would take 29 inches and put 29 into your calculator, divided by 1.618, and you would actually get 17.9. Okay? Now, when you divide it up, you'll have this long number. So whatever is after the decimal point, you would just round up to the last two numbers. Most of you have done that in school. Then you leave that number on your calculator, divide that by 1.618, and you end up getting this line. Okay? So now you have two lines, and then you divide that up, and you get the third line, the fourth line. Now, if you notice, the lines start off big, and they get smaller as they get across the canvas this way. Then you flip it over, and you do the same thing this way. Okay? You'll end up with this measurement here first, this measurement second, and then you'll start putting these measurements here. If you actually write the measurements down as you go through them, you can actually just duplicate them, and it doesn't take you a lot of time. Likewise, you do the same thing here. As you measure the length, divide that by 1.618, you get this line, divide that by 1.6 to get this line smaller. And likewise, the other direction. Now, why is this important to actually lay this out? It's not perspective, no. Focal point. Now, when we're talking about composition, we usually want to have a central focal point. The central focal point is the thing, and we'll talk about central focal points and stuff in later things, but just as it applies to the golden mean, it's the thing that you want the viewer to actually see. Okay? That should actually fall somewhere within the center of the canvas. Now, the law of thirds, which is what artists used to use, breaking everything up into thirds, this is actually where it started from. But, you know, like I said, painters have gotten lazy. So they go, well, thereabouts on the third, there it is, break it up into thirds, you're good. Well, actually, if you look at it, here's like the sweet spot of the painting. And if we actually break this up into thirds, it's actually even tighter than a third. The lines are actually closer. And so if we wanted to actually feel how something should be or where it should be on the canvas, it's kind of like moving the couch in the right spot. Out here is where most artists would have their central focal point. But it really should be a little closer in towards the center, slightly over to the side. It will make the difference. Not huge. It's like when you walk into your living room and your husband goes, oh, that's perfect. And you go, now it is. You know? It's that little bit. But that little bit can make or break your painting. Okay? Once you have the central focal point on here, then what you do is you put all of your secondary focal points, which we'll talk about later, your eye magnets, everything falls into this framework here. Okay? So we'll have the central focal point here, secondary ones here. Now, how it applies to a landscape Joan actually brought this Bierstadt, and I actually laid this out. But the way that these old masters work, this is a Bierstadt painting done about 1880. What does that canvas look like? It looks like a golden mean canvas. This is what these artists were working on back then. Now you can recognize, when you go to the museums, how these artists were working. These rules were forgotten. They were forgotten for 100 years. They're coming back in because traditional painting is in, abstract is out. Modernism is out. Traditional is coming back. Okay? So, what we actually do here is the horizon line will sit on this, here. And so when you're looking at your photograph, you'll go, where's my horizon line? Well, it's either going to be here, or it's going to be here. See how that figures out? Now, if you look at the main subject matter here, this tree over here, okay, that will actually go right here. And if you notice, it's sitting right there. This mountain actually will sit right in here. And it will go up to this point, and actually the point of that actually will end up at one of these spots. So every spot in the painting that is significant, like the sky in here, will actually find its place in one of these junctions. Every one of these junctions here, that where these two things come together, is exactly the same proportion as the overall effect. So when you put something in here, it actually mimics the space here. And that's why everything starts to look orderly. And the viewer is not aware of it, but they know everything's in order. They don't have to move the couch over to make it work. So why wouldn't you design every painting you do using golden mean? It is really one of the secrets that would change your painting forever. And that's all we got to say about that. Any questions?
Amazing.
It is. It's really cool, especially when you actually see a painting used that way. Okay?